Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's great to have you here. You know, it's Saturday when you open up the podcast and you see this guy, Jonathan Shop, is our guest. Jonathan is a very well respected journalist and he's a highly successful attorney in the Atlanta Buckhead area who joins us each and every week to look at the NFL, not just microly like I do, but macroly. Great vision. And John, great to have you here. I want to talk to you about something that I've been trying to explain in a couple of national interviews, and I think it's very important that the Raiders um, under Pete Carroll, they have a new look, but are getting back their old mentality. And that is a very big deal. This is one of those franchises that is tied to a personality. And I don't mean Al Davis, but I mean tough, competitive, and they got away from that. So in their new look, they're establishing their old identity. I think that's priceless for the Raiders.
It is. When you've got one of those iconic franchises, when you've got one of those iconic brands like the Steelers, like the Cowboys, to another extent, the Giants, the Washington franchise, the Raiders, there is something to it. And there is also something I think historically that's been way underrated. The best Raider teams were underrated for their football IQ, their talent, and their precision. This was not just a team of drunken sailors doing crazy stuff, rolling in, drying out, and getting into training camp and winning Super Bowls and competing for them. That's more lure than it is actual fact. It's always been more lure. We may have seen that boat begin to turn a little bit with Antonio Pierce wanting to go back and embrace some of the Raider tradition. Now you're seeing it full steam ahead. So it's another really a way to reinvigorate the Raiders and look at how can we sharpen the saw. So instead of the idea that they're just showing up, John Matuszak and all the other legendary stories, more story maybe than reality, how do they get the edge? This is the most competitive business arguably in America. It's obviously the most popular form of entertainment. Now you've got some really interesting jigsaw puzzle pieces and leadership trends inside the Raiders that of course include Pete Carroll and in course contrast and collaborate so well with John Spytek, Tom Brady, Richard Seymour, etc. That's what they're trying to do. But don't forget about the hidden part of the Raiders. From an outside perspective, the Raiders had more talent. They were smarter. They were better put together than so many folks thought. You think about the first time that John Gruden was around, and I don't want to bring up that famous fumble yet again, but if that goes another way, history is very different. You think about some of the weird stuff that's happened since, and now you got a clean slate. And it makes all the sense in the world that Pete Carroll says, hey, we're putting this thing together. We're trying to build. We're trying to reestablish the foundation. We're trying to build on the success of the Raiders. But so much of that is tied up in silly lore. That needs to be put aside. The best way to do it is by putting together a smart franchise that stacks wins on each other, that does things that make sense and follow their big, large mission, which is obviously to get back to winning on a consistent basis. A lot of that sounds like jibber jabber right now. I know that's true, but it's not. What they're doing inside of that building, what they're doing with that franchise seems to have a vision to 2028 to 2030 and beyond. If this goes well, this is really a launching point for a successful run of the Raiders that's going to carry on for many years, like some of the most successful franchises in this sport. We know who some of them are, what some of them don't have, as they're new to the success flow, if you will. They don't have the tradition. They don't have the legacy. They don't have necessarily the identity of the Raiders. So tapping back into that makes a lot of sense.
Great. Derek Carr is one of the biggest factions in Raider Nation. And it just amazes me. But love Derek or hate Derek, he went out in a Derek Carr way. Would you talk about that?
He did. I know it's been a little while, but we have to talk about this because Derek Carr's in a situation that possibly another quarterback was in of a similar like Kirk Cousins last year. So Derek Carr faces an injury situation, and he has to weigh what he wants to do with his life and what he wants to do with his career and how he wants to treat his employer, his current employer, the Saints. He decides, you know what? I never really played for money. I'm not going to play for money now. I don't want to go through this surgery process. I don't want to put the Saints through this process. He turns down about $30 million in guaranteed money. Um, he didn't want to just have the surgery and sit around. It's understandable. It's a pretty interesting decision. It's a bold decision. He wouldn't have been able to play if he had the surgery. Again, going back to last year with Kirk Cousins, there was a point in time where you didn't know maybe if he had to have a surgery, I might be facing a similar decision. The point is not to pat these guys on the back. The point is that there's some signs. Sometimes there's other stuff going on. Sometimes there's guys playing for a bigger picture than just the dollars and cents. How about that? Pretty refreshing. I never played just for the money. I had a whole bunch of people tell me how crazy I was, and man, I would have never done that. There's a lot of people who like Derek Carr who have put on soft praise for different things that he's done or approaches he's taken. This is a guy absolutely walking the walk. It looks like he did the right thing by the Saints. It looks like he knows he did the right thing by Derek Carr. This is an exit to a career, assuming that he is absolutely done and will not take that temptation to come out of retirement someday. That is unique. There's not a lot of guys that have walked away this way like this. There's a lot more guys that would need and or get the surgery and take the money. The NFL is a business first. Derek Carr made a decision that was bigger than business. It is worth talking about. It is unique. It is refreshing, but it just tells you, it just gets you a reminder that when we get months down the road and we don't know why a guy doesn't look like himself, or he's obviously injured, but we don't know to what extent. Sometimes there's really big stuff going on. Clear-headed decision by Derek Carr, a fascinating career, really, when you look at it from bookend to bookend. And then when you consider, which is almost forgotten these days, who his brother was, and arguably the shadow that Derek Carr was walking in his entire career. It's interesting stuff.
I want to turn Henry Ruggs. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, my family has been impacted by drunk driving. So I am a person who believes our drunk driving sentences are nowhere near stiff enough. And I think they need to be stiffer. And when he got his sentence, I thought at the time, and this is not a Henry Ruggs thought, I think this on just about every drunk driving sentence I see. Wow, he killed somebody. And this is it wasn't a Henry Ruggs thing because I like Henry. I think he's a very good kid that made a stupid decision. But that was my Hondo Carpenter. It wasn't what I reported, just what Hondo Carpenter thought. But now he's getting out and he's talking, and he was talking to people. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Let's address that first. Then I want to come back to my thoughts on whether or not he should return to the NFL.
It's a story all over the place. Ruggs speaks and talks about apology, and it's easy to criticize. I hope that his intent was good. I think showing remorse was good. He should not have probably said, I would love for them to meet the real Henry Ruggs and not the one that was escaping from something. That whether that's true or not, you probably don't want to leave that in an apology. And then you've got the unique situation with the extraordinary speed he was driving the car and expressing a wish to kind of move on with his life and make it as productive as it can in somewhat of a quiet way. It's hard to contrast that with being an NFL player again. So I worry that Mr. Ruggs didn't get maybe the best advice about what to say and what not to say going into this kind of situation. Maybe he didn't know how public this was going to be. It's not necessarily that he did anything wrong, but there is a space for PR help, and he might have benefited from that, given how this has come out and how it's been received by some. When you do something big and flashy, in the NFL, you get more eyeballs on you than practically anything you could possibly do, unless you're selling out a big concert tour or something. I mean, it's insane how many eyeballs are on there. I don't think he realized the reach that this apology would have. I don't think he necessarily measured his words completely, but we believe and understand his remorse for the situation. And it is an interesting football story from here. What does happen here? Going way back to Leonard Little. Leonard Little, for the folks that remember way back, and a couple other guys in the Dick Vermeil era of the Rams, I believe. Sometimes you take guys. I know the Cowboys have had a more recent one, I think. Maybe Randy Gregory. Maybe that's the guy. It's an interesting idea whether you take somebody that's had this kind of situation and this kind of record back into the sport. And an interesting idea if Ruggs wants to do that. It's a little bit different time in that there is a spring pro league. So once again, if this is a guy that wants to rehabilitate his career and get a shot, maybe if he's really dead serious about it, if he's really serious about that, that's an option that comes. But obviously this is a big story related to the Raiders, related to the sport, and what he said got some attention for some good and maybe some questionable reasons. It's interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see what he does with his life and his potential return from here.
All right, so I want to address two areas. I like that he didn't have a PR firm. I agree with you. He said some things I would not have said. But I also think as a 54-year-old man, I'm more seasoned than him. To me, it seemed very, very genuine. That being said, knowing that I feel like our sentences for drunk driving are way too soft, I'm also a rule and order guy. And our society determines what those punishments should be. And when he serves that punishment and he's released, I don't think any NFL team is obligated to give him a chance. And I would support all 32 if they said they didn't want to. But I also hold no grudge against any team that says they would, because this is a guy that paid his debt according to what society said the debt costs. I disagree with the sentence, but the sentence is what it is. I don't think there should be a blanket. And I took a lot of criticism for saying this. If some team wants to sign him, that's their decision, and I would respect it. Your thoughts?
It seems reasonable. That seems to be a pretty reasonable take when you're looking at it from a big perspective. When you're looking at it from, you said 54 years. I think the people know you don't look a day over 45, maybe 45 and a half. I think what you said there is reasonable. And again, I'm not trying to pat the pro spring league on the back. I'm not trying to give them a shout out and everything, but it's absolutely true. There will be guys that are like, man, if I could just get another shot, if I could just get another shot. And when those guys don't get a shot in the NFL, they now have another viable option in these here United States. So I will be looking to see if this guy decides he wants to reboot his career or has a chance or still has the physical tools to do so, if he's willing to take the path, the longer road to it. It's an interesting story. It's one that nobody wants to see repeated. And perhaps there is some future good that he can do educating the NFL players, as I know they try to do each year, rookie symposiums and whatnot, on maybe what not to do. Because as much as this story is alive right now and as much as people out there in Raider Nation know about it, it won't be that many years before there will be rookies and other guys coming up that have no idea this happened.
Great. John, we're going to talk about a topic that I think is pretty amazing, and it's the NFL resurgence of the tight end position. Obviously, Brock Bowers is the best, but I think this resurgence is pretty impressive. What's going on with tight ends in the NFL?
It is. There was a cool list about like who are some of the best tight ends, and you think about what's out there with Kittle, with Bowers, who obviously looks like he's got a potential Hall of Fame future. An underrated guy out in Arizona, McBride, people don't know about. Hawkinson with Minnesota. Remember the impact that had on that franchise when he got injured. We know Mark Andrews, and now Hondo. Now we know about the glove issue that maybe helps to explain, not excuse, that massive drop in the Ravens game. We didn't talk about that story yet, but Andrews recently let word out that, he had an issue with his gloves and thought about making a change with his gloves before he dropped the pass that didn't seem like it could be dropped. Mm-hmm. We all know Travis Kelce, and now it looks like we see this sometimes late in the career. A guy tries to thin down a bit and maybe thin down going into camp or going into the season. Let's take a look at what Kelce looks like at the start of camp for Kansas City and take a look at what he looks like during the season. I'm not saying he's going to pull a LeBron James, but Hondo, you remember when LeBron James tried to cut sugar and lost so much weight, he was ineffective. It didn't look so good. And then he thickened back up a bit. But this tight end position, as we see these things go in cycles, what we've seen, and you could credit Shanahan, you can credit some other guys, McVay, we've seen a resurgence in that position. And I believe it's primarily because of the physical mismatch that it presents. You now have athletes like Kelce and like Bowers who present a massive physical mismatch on the other side. Who is going to cover these guys? So it's a fun cycle we see in the NFL. Obviously, Raider fans know about it. Todd Christensen, when I was a kid, was about as good as it got relative to pass catching tight ends, and the position was different.
Travesty, he's not in the NFL to me.
You would think
in the Hall of Fame.
I thought we were watching a Hall of Famer in real time. When you see the evolution of that position, of course, now you're seeing it trickle into the college game where you saw Bowers do his thing. And I wonder if it's going to trickle down even further into the high school game. Until somebody figures out how to stop these dominant tight ends, we're going to look for big numbers. So for every Wesley Walls who had big numbers, and then you see the position ebb and flow, right now we may be in a little bit of a golden age of the tight end. And I know all the folks in Raider Nation are looking for real exciting things to see. How does this new offense figure out a way to feature, if not build around, Brock Bowers? And that might be something that, as this offense gets going with the ground game, really becomes a problem for the defenses. The tight end is arguably the second or third most valuable position in an NFL offense right now for those that have a really good one.
John, Jackson Dart's a guy that we talked about in the 2023 process, in the 2024 process, a year before he came out. Took a ton of criticism all offseason, saying him and Cam Ward were the majority of teams, the only two guys they had with first-round grades. But, man, all reports coming out of Gotham, this guy is hitting the mark.
Fascinating stuff we've got with the Giants. This is a really important year for you-know-who. We're talking about Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. What are they going to do with the quarterbacks? They've got like a half dozen almost. So the more positive press there is for Dart from day one, which is kind of now through, the more pressure you're going to get from Giant fans and media that want to see what this guy can do. It's going to be a balancing act for the Giants because they've got to figure out, their current leadership has to figure out, how much do we have to win? How much leash, if any, do we have? And it sounds like it's short. So can we get can we get Dart out there? Can we get him prepared? Can we get him exposed? What's the main goal here? I think it's really simple and it's the same goal really for a young quarterback. They need to find out what he can do now and what his potential might be, and whether they can do that. Can they do that just, in training camp and practices? Probably not. Can they do that in preseason a bit? I think that they can. I remember some guys like Kirk Cousins, some guys, I think Jordan Love, some guys having some flashes in preseason at different points in time that made you think, oh, this may be somebody that can start in the NFL. So the interesting thing with Dart is he good enough to go ahead and throw out there really early for the Giants? And can they afford to do so? I'm not sure that they can. If Daboll has to win games, and obviously he wants to win games, he's going to, I think, be very competent in finding and wanting to start the guy that can get them the most wins right now, who you might think would be Russell Wilson based on his experience and based on, some of his play even last year. But you've got this guy back there who a lot of people see as a future NFL starter, who a lot of people thought maybe is the best potential in this draft. And to hear good things about him this early, it's not that it's a surprise, but I'm not so sure that's what the Giants want. I'm not so sure that's what they want to be asked about, because they got to win games first and develop Jackson Dart second. It'll just be interesting to watch during the fall how much of that equation gets shifted one way or the other. If people keep talking about how good Dart looks, if he looks pretty good in the preseason, if he looks just as good as the others, there's going to be so many calls for Jackson Dart that Dable and Shane are going to have to make a difficult decision, and they may be they may honestly be kind of cracking the door to be shown the door, which I'm sure is not what they want to do.
And you're a lawyer, so there's an interesting NFL TV court case you got to give me the explanation on.
Oh boy, big stuff. Broadcast partners backing the NFL Sunday ticket high pricing and legal filing. So what we've got here is a case going on. A federal judge, if you remember last summer, he overturned a $4.7 billion jury verdict that found the NFL's out-of-market package violated antitrust laws and that the league had conspired to keep Sunday ticket prices high. So what you have here is the broadcast partners coming in to try to explain, well, yeah, well, you know, the prices have to be high. They have to be this way. They're trying to support the NFL, which makes sense because they are broadcast partners. What is at issue here is there some kind of conspiracy and collusion to keep your Sunday ticket cost so high? And the plaintiffs made a case. Jury said, yes, we think there is. And then that thing got flipped overturned. So it's going through the appeals process. This is going to get ugly and unique because what you have is a lot of corporate power on one side saying the price has to be this high and here's why. And then you've got the average Joe folks saying, hey, this is not right. This is really against the law. This is a big story that the NFL does not want any attention on, I don't think, without question. And there will be some attention on it as it continues. You've got issues about sharing feeds and competition, CBS and Fox and NBC, ESPN. It gets very muddy, but the issue at hand is, are they artificially propping up the price of the Sunday ticket? So you've got the broadcast partners saying, hey, it cost us this much to do all of this. And, you know, we're competitors. We're not going to share everything with each other. And you've got others to say, hey, wait a second. This thing is way, way, way too expensive. A $4.7 billion jury verdict sounds very big on its face. We all would agree. But you'd have to really dig into the details and find out what that was based on in order to know if that was an absolutely outstanding verdict or if that was a verdict based on this many subscribers, this much illegal activity, doing the math and saying, hey, that's where it comes out to be. I know this. There are so many of us who have that ticket, who enjoy the ticket, who are very curious in how this gets played out and the ultimate outcome of it, because it has a direct impact on our wallets and our ability to watch all 32 NFL teams.
Don, can you explain to me, though, if a jury made the verdict, how does a judge just come in and overturn the jury?
There's a number of reasons that a jury verdict could be overturned, including basically misbehavior by a jury, using outside influences in a jury determination. And on occasion, the number is just way outstanding. It's way out of bounds. It's way beyond the relation of damage that was done. Sometimes you hear outstanding verdict numbers that are remitted, which is brought down by a judge. So there are reasons to do that. That's what this fight is about, really, is, first of all, you overturn the jury. You got to have a really good reason that's based on really good, solid law in order to get that to stick. Otherwise, we're going to get that overturn flip back. And the award amount is $4.7 billion. Is it justified? Is it based on anything in reality? because it is a big number, but it can still be based on reality, again, relative to subscribers, dollars spent, etc. But this is such a wild scene here because you've got the most popular form of entertainment televised. You've got the most expensive broadcasting rights. There's so much at play here. The broadcast partners have a ton, obviously, a ton to lose here if there's a decision that is made to reinstate any verdict, even if it's $2.5 billion. This is the biggest story in the NFL this offseason that's going to get the least amount of coverage because none of these broadcast partners want, they're fighting this out in court. They don't want to fight it outside of court also. How are you ever going to win when you've got your paying audience who says, hey, wait a minute, we're getting taken for a ride here and we didn't even know it? So don't expect a whole lot of coverage on this at all on those broadcast outlets. We're going to follow this story because it is fascinating and it is a long way from being over. And we will dig deeper into it during the summer months because it absolutely affects almost all of us. If you're watching this show, there's a decent chance you know what the Sunday ticket is, or you've already got it, or you're thinking about getting it. And it will be much more appetizing if the price of that Sunday ticket is much less than it was, or less than it was last year. At the same time, we're not that far from $500 a year for a Sunday ticket. And I don't know how many people are going to bite that bullet for $500. The broadcasting landscape of the NFL is completely and consistently changing. I have in the back of my mind the old Mark Cuban quote about the NFL: pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. This might be one of those situations, if it doesn't go well for the broadcast partners in the NFL, that they get pulled back a little bit by the long arm of the law.
Well, I can tell you, I've said it all along. The only person that can kill the NFL is the NFL. John, last one, because it is kind of legal. The Sanders 100.
It's off season. We know what happens when athletes get cars. But how about this one? This one caught some people by surprise. Shedeur Sanders reportedly cited for driving over 100 miles an hour at 12:24 a.m. on 71 North. This is odd. 71 North in Ohio. We don't know much about this story as we're talking about it right now, but we're curious about a lot of things. Was there an accelerator stuck? Was there some other outstanding circumstance going on? It does not appear right now that there's any kind of intoxication issue. Otherwise, that would already be widely spoken and out there. So what we have is probably wrong place, wrong time, wrong speed. 100 miles an hour is extremely fast anytime. It's extremely fast in dry conditions on a sunny or partly cloudy day. Why are you going 100? And I mean, if he was on the Ohio Turnpike, as Hondo knows, and anybody knows that drove that, you can go 67 and get a ticket. I have seen it. I have been on the Ohio Turnpike, cruise control 65. Somebody's pulled over going 67. They'll take your credit card right there. Bad luck for Shedeur. We haven't heard anything about this yet. We need to know if this is a really bad decision and a dumb mistake, or if there's some other outstanding circumstance. But this is a wild card. This is not good. This is the guy you want leading your franchise. You want leading your team, demonstrating a consistent effort and the best judgment out there. I'm not trying to point a finger and say Derek Carr would never go 100 on I-71 in the summer, but a lot of guys didn't. Shedeur Sanders has to have a good explanation for what happened here, or he's got to have a huge serving and take all this humble pie down and maybe do something to try to help people not repeat his mistake. Learn from my mistake. Don't make my mistake. It's a bad sign when anybody's going 100. As we know, we just talked about another issue, way over 100 miles an hour also. What in the world would prompt this? Shedeur appears to be going in the right direction, and all of a sudden, he took a really wrong turn and hit the gas. There'll be more on this story. Ideally for Sanders, it stays real quiet and that this is it. And there's never really more to it. But that's such an extreme speed. You have to wonder, why would he be doing that at 12:30 in the morning?
Agreed. John, tell everybody where to find you on X.
I am at JP Spartan. And as we know, we are 70 some days or so away from kickoff. We will begin to simmer the pot. We will get the pot simmering. Will be plenty to cover between now and kickoff. As we know, there will be probably, again, Raiders at the Lake Tahoe celebrity golf event, which to me has served each year as kind of the last fun for NFL coaches and players. You see them there, and then it's like, well, from here, you know where it goes. So we'll be cooking it up at JP Spartan. We'll be keeping an eye. We'll be covering some other off-season stories as we get everybody ready for the start.
Thanks, John.